Hey everybody, it's Glenn, back in this video with the recently released Toys R Us exclusive Marvel Legends X-Men Infinite Series Jubilee Build-A-Figure Collection Storm. Yeah, this ain't no ordinary action figure review, it's an action figure comparison with the Marvel Legends Series 8 Storm from 2005 by Toy Biz. So before I get into the comparison, I'm currently opening Storm. She does come with the biggest chunk of Jubilee, which now completes that Build-A-Figure for me, so expect a review coming soon. But I'm trying to remove Storm from the packaging, and her cape, I don't know if you can see there, it's like fastened into the plastic bubble. From where it's been fastened, it's kind of left creasing in her cape. So I've decided to try and iron out the creases in the cape, which really shows my dedication to action figure collecting, as here I am ironing the clothes of an action figure, and I don't even bother ironing my own. But then, unlike me, who's past caring, I'm sure Storm is the kind of classy broad who don't step outside the X-Mansion without a nicely ironed uniform. There you can probably see the difference. So now as they're ready to go face to face for a stare down, ironing the cape may have seemed like a lot of effort, but I wanted Storm to look her best for this one. Yet that effort ain't nothing compared to what I put into trying to get these two action figures to stand up. In the end, I just gave up and plonked them on a display base. So it's modern Storm by Hasbro versus the older Toy Biz Storm, rendered in a much more classic Jim Lee style costume from the 90s. Anyway, let's compare the various aspects of each action figure, taking into account sculpt, articulation and deco. Then at the end of the video, you guys let me know in the comments below which you think is best. So Hasbro chose to render their Storm action figure in her Marvel Now costume that she's currently wearing in the comic books. And as to why they chose that, I don't think it's part of any big design, other than it's probably the cheapest costume they could render, with all the detail on it being paint deco. And I have seen comic art where the white X on her chest is a raised detail, so it's a shame they couldn't have sculpted in a bit of costume detail here. But then the silver lining of that is there's nothing to distract away from the body, and this is probably one of the best sculpted female bodies we've ever had in Marvel Legends. And looking at the Toy Biz version, it provides a counterpoint to the lack of sculpted detail on the Hasbro one, as here they've really gone to town, and in my opinion probably a little too much. I think when it comes to sculpting creases in fabrics, less is more, and it's better to sculpt a few creases here and there to give the overall impression of fabric. But they've sculpted so many creases, it kind of looks like she's wearing a crumpled up black plastic garbage sack. And it hurts me to knock a 100% original sculpt like this, as it's so rare with action figures today that we get that, but I have to call it as I see it. Now taking an even closer look and comparing the head sculpts, and I definitely side with the modern Hasbro Storm here. In my opinion, just has a much more naturalistic look to it. Not that the Toy Biz head sculpt is terrible, yet it is on the small side if you compare it to other Marvel Legend action figures. When it comes to painting the eyes, Hasbro have screwed up many of their female figures by mispainting the pupils, making them look all derpy. Yet no visible pupils for Storm, so no chance of Hasbro falling at that final hurdle. Comparing the hair, and I actually really love this mohawk, it's so big and majestic. There was a variant of the Toy Biz action figure that came with a mohawk, yet that mohawk was much smaller, and I'm sure if that variant looked upon this modern Hasbro Storm, she'd have mohawk envy. The paint deco on the hair of the modern Storm is much better as well. It seems like the mohawk is a base grey plastic with white dry brushing over it to highlight, and the Toy Biz one, it seems like the hair is a white base plastic with patches of blue sprayed to provide some shading, yet that lends a less convincing illusion of highlights and shadows than the modern Storm one. Now comparing the capes, and they are handled entirely differently. As we've already seen, modern Storm's cape is fabric, and the downside I've already covered is that in the packaging it comes creased. The old Toy Biz Storm, her cape is rubber, so it is much more durable, plus it's also a lot more dynamic as it's sculpted to be so, whereas the modern Storm's cape, being fabric, it just hangs loose. So for instance, in a fly or storm conjuring pose, she has a lot less impact, and her cape attaches to her arms via these hoops, which do take some finagling. Often when you raise the arms, they work their way down to the elbow, whereas the Toy Biz Storm, her cape is fixed at the wrist. Now the flip side to a dynamic pose is a neutral one, and here Modern Storm's cape is a lot better for that, as the limpness of the hanging fabric leans to a neutral pose. And in a neutral pose it becomes apparent that the Toy Biz Storm's cape was sculpted with it being in a dynamic pose in mind, as in a neutral position it kind of looks very unnatural. It billows in a way that defies gravity. For accessories, the Modern Storm comes with none unless you count the Jubilee Build-A-Figure part. The Series 8 Toy Biz Storm, she came with this display base. Series 8 was the last series before the Galactus wave, which gave us the first ever Build-A-Figure. So had this Storm action figure came any later in the chronology of Marvel Legends, she would have likely come with a Build-A-Figure piece and not this display base. Has holes on the bottom for wall mounting, or I guess wall mounted, the bottom then becomes the side, and then this part articulates. And really it's always going to be difficult to sculpt something ephemeral like clouds and lightning in hard plastic, but they did a fairly decent job. And even if you think it's just a big ugly piece of plastic, at least it stops her from falling flat on her face. In addition to the Marvel Legends Series 8 Mohawk variant, this same body mold reappeared later in the X-Men Classics line, this time redecoed with more of an X-Men 90s animated series look. And here, instead of the clouds and lightning display base, she came with a simple flight stand, which many a Marvel Legends action figure did back then. And if Hasbro aren't going to provide a stand like that, they could at least put a hole in the action figure's back so I can add my own. Yet that said, even the Series 8 action figure didn't have that hole. It seems like it was just an addition made for the X-Men Classics one. I guess if you're like me and customizing inclined, then you can always drill a hole in the back. Now looking at articulation, the heads rotate side to side. They look down this much, and then up this much. Toy Biz Storm has an ab crunch. It moves this far forwards and then this far back. Instead of an ab crunch, the Hasbro Storm has a diaphragm joint. This rotates and it also moves this far forwards and then this far back, and that diaphragm joint is actually in lieu of waist rotation. And then the Toy Biz Storm also rotates at the waist. At the shoulder, the arms of each rotate. They also move up this much. The Toy Biz arm doesn't move up quite as much, and then back down. Toy Biz Storm has upper arm rotation, whereas the Hasbro version does not. And then the Toy Biz figure also has armpit articulation, which moves the arm up and down. At the elbow, the Toy Biz Storm is double jointed, whereas the Hasbro Storm at the elbow it rotates and has a single hinge. Then the Toy Biz Storm, it rotates mid-lower arm, and that's your lot for articulation on the arm. Whereas the Hasbro version, it rotates at the wrist, and then it's also hinged at the wrist, moving up and down. And at the least where the arms are concerned, it's a sad day indeed when a modern Hasbro Marvel Legends out-articulates an old Toy Biz one. Especially with a character like Storm, where the articulation of her hands is important, as it lends to greater posing of the hands, as if she's gesturing, summoning her powers. Then at the hips, the legs move out to the side, not too much, and then back in. They move to the front a real decent amount, but not so much to the back. There's upper leg rotation. There's a double jointed knee. Then the Toy Biz Storm rotates mid-lower leg. Both have an ankle hinge moving backwards and forwards, but then the Modern Storm has an ankle pivot, whereas the Toy Biz one does not. So let me know in the comments below which action figure you think is best. Me personally, I'm siding with the modern Marvel Now Storm by Hasbro. And me saying that is a significant sign that Hasbro have really done a good job with this one, as I'm a big fan of the Jim Lee era of 90s X-Men. So a Storm action figure in a uniform modelled after that era not winning hands down just shows how triumphant I think the Hasbro head sculpt is and how magnificent that mohawk is. That said, this has been the most difficult action figure comparison to shoot, what with the practical problem of these Storm action figures not being able to stand, and it's just so darn ironic that the mistress of the elements herself can fall over from the slightest breeze. So going forward, I hope that's something Hasbro can resolve with future female figures. Sure, a character like Emma Frost has probably never worn flat shoes in her life, but beyond her, I don't think it's essential that every female character either be wearing high-heeled shoes or wedges. Anyway, please comment, rate, share, and subscribe. Click this video for the previous action figure comparison. Check out the description beneath this video for links to my Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Click those links and connect with me there too. Hope to see you in my next video. Bye.